Greetings, everybody. This is Jim. Have you ever played a game just for its looks alone? I mean, I definitely can appreciate good artwork, but at the same time, I'm a gamer who loves rules and rule systems, and I've played plenty of games that are great, but the production values were less than stellar. However, when I seen this game, this little book right here, and the artwork in it, I had to try it out. It kept on calling to me, and it's expensive. I really took a lot of faith into picking this game up. It was like $80, and the sequel was also about $80. Actually, a lot more. I just found it on a deal there. But the thing is, this game, not without its flaws, has got a lot to show for it, and it's one of the very first games that was actually what brought forth the RuneQuest role-playing game. So today, I'm going to be going over with you my review and telling you why you should be playing, if you can get your hands on it, White Bear and Red Moon and its sequel, Nomad Gods, and why you shouldn't necessarily be playing the Avalon Hill rendition of it, Dragon Pass. Although the saying goes, you can't judge a book by its cover, as a marketer, I know that a good cover will definitely still get you to purchase it. And that's what happened to me with White Bear Red Moon. Steve Swenston is the person responsible for me wanting to get into this, because that cover just looks great. It's definitely obviously the old school black and white, but this is also when everybody had their own style. All the artists had their own style, and they still do, I'm sure, but it just seems more homogenous now that computers are in the mix, and it can be more assembly line kind of drawing. This is definitely something that brings you in, and the images throughout the book, as I'll show you, definitely bring you into another world. It's Greg Stafford's ideas. Of course, he's the main guy at Chaosium that brought us this RuneQuest and Pendragon, amongst other things. But definitely, if it wasn't for Steve Swenston, this wouldn't have its own feel. The same thing goes with like Harnworld RPG from Columbia Games. Richard Luschek is a great artist, and he's been doing that forever for Harnworld. And if all of a sudden you took the pictures and put another artist in, as competent as they might be, it's going to give it a completely different feel, and would actually just jar you if it was different. And we'll get into changes in the artwork maybe later. The game seems simple enough, and like any other war game, quite honestly, so you could think you could just roll right into this thing. You got a combat factor, which of course is against the other person's combat factor, and you roll on the chart to see what happens in any kind of combat. You have a movement factor, which is how many hexes you can move. Of course, that can be affected by terrain. A magic factor, which is just another combat factor, just for only magic attacks and defense. And then you have a range factor, which not all units have, but simply put, it's how many hexes your magic attacks can reach. And if you don't have a range factor, you can't attack with magic. So simple enough, so we think. And this is where the simplicity actually stops. I mean, this gets intimidating real quick because the rules really make you go all over the place. I'll get into that in a little bit. But right after showing you what the stats are for the counters, then all of a sudden they give you this special symbol list here, which is overwhelming. I love it because I do have an appreciation for it, because it makes every unit special. Okay, it's almost like I'm playing Warhammer or Warhammer 40K Hex Encounter, because it makes it so all these units that they have in the game, and there are a lot of units even past the basic scenarios, and they say go play with these things, but they all have special things that are designated by these symbols, and even the symbols can be confusing because they reuse some of them because they run out of symbols, I guess, or something. But like in the parentheses, if the parentheses are around the combat factor, it means the unit doesn't count in stacking. This is usually used for individuals or certain monsters, because a unit's usually 500 of that type of unit. These are epic battles, right? But if the parentheses are around the range factor, it means it has an irregular use of its range for some reason, which I didn't even get into. But that's all these things, a lot of them you're not even using. Their exceptions. This game's about all kinds of exceptions for these units and stuff like that, and it's overwhelming at first. Now, this map is beautifully busy, okay? Not overly so, just strategically beautifully busy, by the way, is what I really mean. Because no matter what you do, you want to overwhelm your enemy with odds, right? You want to surround them and such. But the thing is, it's hard to do that because they're going to go into defensive positions, and it's hard to do that without putting your own guys at risk of a good counterattack. So that's nice. There are some ambiguities in the rules to the terrain. You have to use your own wargaming knowledge to make sense One of them was like, if you're on a slope, you get to double your defense if the attackers are coming up the slope. That makes sense. But in most war games, as long it doesn't say this in the rules, but if there's one enemy that's on the plateau with you and attacking, it negates the double defense. That's how it normally would go, but it doesn't say that. And there's a lot of that in this game. As much as there's a lot of exceptions, there is a lot of, I don't want to say sloppy rule writing, but there's a lot of, but what about this and what about that? And you have to use your common sense. It does talk about using common sense early in the book, actually, about using common sense to make the rules. And I think he uses that as a caveat because he knew dang well that, he didn't have it all at the time of the publication. Now, I don't know the psychological profile of Greg Stafford. Okay, but I feel like he's played war games and he was totally devastated by, certain things, which we'll get into a little bit. And he says, my players are never going to feel disappointed when they're having their turn as much as possible. Because this game is very liberal and forgiving. And let me explain what I mean. And it's a combination of a number, not just one rule. But the first one I'm going to talk to you about is the drift rule. As long as you have one movement point left, you can go into that hex. Not stopping you. You can go right in. The only exception, and again, this game's full of exceptions, is if you're going up a ridge. For whatever reason, Greg decided that's where the line was drawn for that one. Whatever. But nonetheless, one movement point will get into the next hex. The next is combat odds are rounded up instead of down, okay? Of course, this helps for the attacker. Of course, the attacker and the defender both benefit from this if they can, but the thing is, I think it benefits attackers more. And the thing is, like combat factors for some stacks can get in their 20s or 30s. So let's say 20 and you're defending. As soon as, if an attacker has even 21, and there are units that have small numbers, so just getting that one little unit extra in there will make you go from 1-to-1 to 2-to-1 combat odds, right? So that's another liberal thing. And the third one is the combat results table itself. It seems to definitely favor the smaller guy. Oh, the big fight, right? The Rudy, the 300, the Bilbo Bagginses and such, just the small guys, the little engine that could, basically even 3-to-1 combat odds, as you can see here, the attacker can be eliminated. And that's the entire attack, the entire stack, everybody in it, gone. All right. So 3-to-1 combat odds is a 1 in 6 chance that the attacker still loses. All right. And then you go to the opposite end, the 1 against 2, or the 1-to-2 combat odds, where you are definitely at the disadvantage in attacking. Like, we're going to make a valiant charge. And even a 1 in 6 chance a defender will get eliminated. Right? So you got all these crazy combat odds, which makes it a little swingy of a game, to a large degree. Now, the thing is, what they don't say is for 6-1 or greater odds, that means automatic elimination, okay? But they don't say anything about you can't have worse than 1-to-2 odds, and they absolutely should. They do it in the sequel, Nomad Gods. Okay, they made it a point to say it. But so I think that's the unwritten rule here, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of little units saying, the heck with it, I'll just take a lot of units, attack the big stacks, and take my 1 in 6 chance. Now, I don't know if Stetson did the artwork for the counters or not, but these were beautifully done. They're a little bit thicker than normal. The only thing I would say, at least in my copy, were 2 of the colors, and this was definitely true in Nomad Gods, where some of the colors just were a little bit too close and you couldn't tell them apart when you're looking at them on the board, depending on the light and such. But overall, these were just beautiful counters. I have to rethink my thought on a lot of the old school RPG worlds because of the idea that I thought that narrative storylines with super plot armor only happened in more modern times. This kind of makes me think of the exception because these heroes have plot armor to the 10th degree. So first off, stacking doesn't apply to them. That's not really a surprise. Every unit is generally 500 of that type. Okay, so one guy going into a hex is not going to affect anything. They can also, and when they're in combat, they can go through difficult terrain a little bit easier. But of course, that only helps if they're by themselves. If they're with the stack, the stack always has to obey the laws of the slowest in the stack. right? But that happens there. Now, in combat, and this is where the plot armor happens, if they get completely eliminated, like the attacker eliminated all the units, even if it was a big stack and multiple stacks of units, they always survive. The only time that they can get eliminated is if they are attacked by themselves alone. And then it gets even crazier and even more exceptions that you can't even decipher why. Superheroes and best friends, they're above normal heroes. So superheroes basically, they are immune to magical attacks, and they extend that to their own stacks as well, okay? They can cross difficult terrain pretty easily, and they extend that to their entire stacks because they can move further and better. And they take 5 wounds to kill them. All right, so not only does the stack have to get eliminated first before they can even get really attacked, then they got to get attacked, suffer a defender eliminated result, and that results in 1 hit point. And then they got 5 of them to get killed. So these are big, epic people. Now, the thing is, and this is real weird, when they're paired with their best friend, if they have one, their best friend, basically, if he's with the stack with them, they double their combat factor. So that's a big thing. But the only thing is, now there's the hero's stack is susceptible to magic. They get a magic factor of 10 and they figure that in. So that's really weird. There's no explanation as to why. So I'm a little bit confused of it, other than to just make something happen to make the superheroes a little bit more vulnerable, as if they weren't strong enough anyway, even with this vulnerability. Now, the only thing is, if the best friend gets killed, all of a sudden the superhero goes on a wild rampage and must attack that stack that killed the best friend and not stop until they're all eliminated. And of course, or he dies. And of course, depending on, it'd be kind of funny to have some unit that was really fast and just get away from him. He's chasing him for all eternity off the board, But so that might be the easiest way to eliminate a superhero, in my opinion. In most war games, when you have a story developing, it's like, okay, I've got my left flanks a little bit hurt. I broke through in the middle here, and etc. But it's always my side against your side, right? That's about it. Here, it adds a lot more story depth because they have the battalias. So what this is an order of battle, which says that these units belong in this group all the time. So in the scenario, they don't have to say, oh, this unit belongs on this square. This unit belongs on this square. He gets around that whole thing saying, here's all the units you have in this group. Place them here at the Plains of Prax, south of this thing. It gives you a landmark, and you just place them all there. And so now what happens is your side might have 3 of these battalia, like the Lunar College of Magic on the left flank, the Imperial Bodyguard making up the middle, and the Cavalry Corps on the right. So now it has an extra level of storytelling. So when you say, oh, my left flank is gone, now you say the Lunar College of Magic got damaged and they retreated. I could see why people wanted to play this as an RPG later, because it's so filled with so many ideas. I mean, Glorantha, the world setting for this, which became RuneQuest, is like filled with, it's a Bronze Age setting. All right. And there's lots of little factions of nomads and little cults that actually oppose each other all the time, as opposed to more there are bigger civilizations, but most games have all these big civilizations, and it's just A versus B, while these other ones interact and make alliances all over the place, making it very interesting, especially if you're playing a traveling set of people. So there's definitely a lot of role-playing potential here. Now, they categorize magic in 3 different ways. It's simple enough, actually. The steady state magicians just use their magic factor like you would in regular combat. The exotic magicians have a magic factor, but it's actually used to cast certain spells or abilities that they have. And then you have the cyclical magicians, which are just like the steady state magicians that use their magic factor to attack, but it waxes and wanes depending on the position of the red moon, which changes from turn to turn. Now, one of the most beautiful yet intimidating and overwhelming parts of this game is the unit list, which I believe should have been put into the back because there's so much there. And that's the beauty part of it. I'll just go over right here. There are so many units in the game, and with all 8 scenarios, I doubt you use them all. I doubt you do. And most of them have a nice little write-up. Some of them have a write-up that's 2 or 3 paragraphs long, which is understandably why this was used as a catalyst to make the role-playing game of RuneQuest. And some of them just have their exceptions. Some of them don't have any exceptions at all. They're just the units themselves. But some of them have exceptions and they list them at the end. Some of them have their own rules entirely that take up a page and a half. So beautiful stuff. The only problem is, again, it's not in the right place in this rule book. By the time you're done reading the rules, they should have just gone right to the scenarios. And I say this actually with most games, but I understand why they did that, because it follows normal wargaming procedure. Usually units are listed at somewhere in the beginning of the rule book, right? But the difference is two things. One, they list what they are concisely, and they list their exception, and that's it. Very small block. Okay. Obviously, like I just shown you, there is a lot that they go through with the unit list here. These are very big indeed. Plus, it's not on the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. The first edition was, but this one certainly isn't, and that makes for a lot of waiting before you actually even get to the scenarios. Now, Nomad Gods is a standalone expansion of White Bear Red Moon. It can be used with it, but generally you can use it without it, and mainly because even though it uses the exact same rules, the map itself and the things you have to do beyond that map make it its own game entirely and makes it pretty exciting. Let's go over that. The map to Nomad Gods is very deceptive. It looks like you're going to be fighting on open ground all day, and that's not the case. You're actually going to be fighting in most likely in condensed areas, like in the middle of the map here where the sacred ground is, where it's got much more vegetation, because the clear hexes are actually chaparrals, or very sparse brushland. Now, when you look at the sparse brushland online, you're looking at it and you're like, well, you could survive on that. Remember, each unit is 500 people big, and you can stack up to 3. So yeah, you're going to need some support when you go into cross a chaparral. And you do that by having either a medicine bag or a herd with you. Okay, and both of those are valuable, and they can be taken and used from you and stuff, and you only have so many. So in this game, you're going to be traveling across the chaparral, get your units to where you want them to be, and then go off and get some more, right? So as you can see, a lot of the first two scenarios have to do with this sacred ground, and in the middle it's something called the paps. And you're definitely very quickly going to start fighting in the middle, probably ending those fights before your reinforcements even arrive. Now, I don't have a PDF of Nomad Gods, but I'll just show you right here. They do have skirmishers in this game. Now, the thing about skirmishers is next to their combat value, which is usually very low, like 1 or 2, they have an asterisk. And some of them there's one unit that has 2 of them. It's a special unit. But the number of asterisks is the number number of attacks of skirmishing they have, count as attacking skirmishers. So, you combine all the skirmishers that you might have attacking this one unit, and you roll on the chart here, and you could either disrupt or you can eliminate the unit. Now, usually they don't get eliminated. As you can see, even with 4 or 5 attacking skirmishers, there's only a 50% chance for something to happen, and you might eliminate a unit. Now, depending on the unit you're attacking, these are really effective against big, strong stacks, because then it becomes worth doing, because again, they only have a 1 or a 2 combat value anyway, so why not just take the chance, because they're going to be ineffective no matter what. But if you did hit with it, one of those, and it doesn't say it, I guess it's random, that's one of the ambiguities here, one of those defending units is going to be either disrupted or eliminated, but usually it's disrupted, and that's still good, because then it flips over and its combat value doesn't count for that turn. So if it's a big stack, you just knocked off a lot of their combat value, which is going to incredibly help your combat odds. So unlike White Bear Red Moon, where it was just basically 2 factions fighting each other, which was the Sartar against the Imperial, here there's 5 factions, 5 tribes fighting constant wars of supremacy all the time. Think of the American Indians back in the day, just constant little wars. And those are the Impala tribe, the Bison tribe, the High Llama tribe, the Sable tribe, and the Morokan tribe. Okay, now the Impala tribe basically has a lot of skirmishers and very weak otherwise. The Bison tribe is the exact opposite. No skirmishers, but very sturdy. And everybody else is a little bit of a mix in between. So that's what's going on there. Now, they also have Cons, which is their version of heroes, nowhere near as powerful as regular heroes, but they do serve a pretty good purpose. The cons can add one to their stack's attack roll, and they can subtract one to the attack roll from anybody attacking them. Of course, two cons cancel each other out, but they also can call the founders, which is one of the tribal deities that each tribe has. The founders are up here, and they're very powerful indeed, about anywhere from, on average, about 3-1 versus a regular unit, right? They can take an entire stack on by themselves. And so that's what they can do. And then there's other tribal deities called the protectresses and the ancestors that can be summoned in different ways. Another unit that each tribe has is the shamans. I should say 2 units, because you get the shaman and its fetch counterpart, which is a clone for all intents and purposes of the game, because it's the exact same thing. And they can cure plagues, and they can attack as spirits using its magic factor. But much like superheroes and best friends, when they combine, they get a special ability, which is to tap into the soul winds. And what they do is they roll 6 dice, they add it all up, they consider that a movement factor, or a combat factor, I should say, and they go towards the closest or whatever enemy they want to, subtracting 1 from their combat value for each hex away from them, and then they take that and use it as a magic attack. Pretty powerful indeed. Steve Swenson did not return to do the artwork for Nomad Gods. Instead, it was done by a gentleman named Gene Day, which did an excellent job, no doubt about it. This guy definitely gets it. The art style is definitely different. I see that in the poses and the way the things are kind of directed. This is more straightforward, but it's definitely, no doubt, enjoyable. And just like in White Bear, there are independents that are big enough, factions only big enough to fit one counter. They have their own specials. Some of them are definitely more vague than others, or I shouldn't say vague, just limited. Like, you get +1 against the Impala clan. Well, that's great unless you are the Impala clan, or the Impala clan's not in the game. And the thing is, another one was, if you get attacked by mounted combat, you double your combat factor. Well, that's great, but what happens when you get hit with a mixture of both? I imagine you get the bonus anyway. Going off of Greg Stafford's kind of more liberalese kind of thing there. But that was interesting. The only thing is, when you're playing, 2-player, the first scenario tells you to use all 10 of them. And of course, that means 5 apiece. And so that's one extra thing to babysit and keep aware of while you're trying to learn the rules of the game. Probably not something I would have played in the first scenario. Now, I bring up the counter sheet again so I can bring back a point about the colors and how it was giving me problems. This was the one that was really giving me problems, because at the top there, you see the yellow, and in the middle left, you see the light brown. If you don't have a strong light source, I could see in here just fine, but it's not considered strong. I have to actually have lights here just for the video. Those will definitely merge. And of course, what did I play? In a 2-player game, I played those 2 factions, those 2 tribes. I should have definitely played red versus blue, or even black, or something like that. Now, mind you, also in the middle there, on the bottom middle to the right, you'll see all those in white. Those are actually the spirits, because there's a lot of spirits that you can conjure up. Of course, all the 4 elements, but also darkness. And I think there's a 6th one in also that's in RuneQuest. So there's a lot of extra stuff that you get to play in this game. So now I want to talk about Avalon Hill's version of this game, Dragon Pass. Now, the thing is, I don't know if they acquired the rights or they just bought a license or whatever, but they thought it was good enough a game that they should actually kind of upgrade it so it would be a little bit more modern, because I don't know how much this costs, but the beauty in the artwork of this is that it looks like they made it themselves. Literally made it themselves. But Avalon Hill said, we'll take a chance on this game. But they also, I am sure, cleaned up a lot of the rule inconsistencies, and they even changed the CRT, which I'll get into a little bit. But first off, what would I say? I'm a little bit jaded on it, because I like the version I got myself, because this is what drew me in. So I have a little bit of a soft spot towards this. Looking at this, first off, that map doesn't even compare. I have nothing against the person that made that map. If I would not have seen the original map that made me feel like I got handed something from the Bronze Age, then this would probably be okay. And it would be okay for most other games that I've played. But this being a complete work of art, I have a hard time getting past that. Nothing wrong with the cover of Dragon Pass, even though the black and white artwork here, again, it's Winston's artwork. It's iconic to it. But again, they want to try to promote it, and color's going to sell, so that's what they did. Avalon Hill also has the benefit of having the graphical capability of making different symbols on their counters rather than just what they can find on the typewriter and not having to duplicate any of them. Now, this still makes for some busy counters, but I think it's a better solution. Now, the only thing, again, we're talking about the artwork. Swenson's artwork is still all across this thing, and in later parts of the book, it's every page. So it's still all there. I guess it's just being introduced to that. I really like that a lot. This definitely may have been just as good, in my opinion, had I encountered it first. So combat is completely different, getting rid of just about all the swinginess that the original games had, okay? So I'm thinking it's going to be a better system, and it's much more straightforward, and it's kind of more of a combined arms thing. So here's what happens. First off, magic happens, and it's chaotic magic first, then physical magic, and then spirit magic. What the differences are between the three, I can't really say. I just know they tended to eliminate units differently, okay? But then they go into missile fire, which is basically what the skirmishers did, okay? So now skirmishers are in the original White Bear and Red Moon, which now I got to find out which units they changed, which are now skirmishers. So that'll be interesting to see. But as we know, that can disrupt people or maybe even eliminate a few. Now, what the big change is in melee. And to get into that, it kind of works. Let's go to the combat results table here, which is completely different than the odds version. This is actually done by attack tables, which is basically whatever your combat factor or magic factor is, you figure it out here, and then you roll a d6, and that's how many combat factors of the opponent has to go. Okay, so if you're doing combat factors for melee and you have a 10, you roll on this, you roll a 4, you got 5, they have to get rid of 5 combat factors. If you're doing magic, then it would be magic combat factors equal, okay? The only difference is it has to come, if you're taking it from a stack. Now, if you're taking it from an individual hex with only one unit, you can just take that off. But if you're taking from a stack, it has to be able to take the person on the top stack first before it can get to the bottoms. So what happens when you have like a unit that's got a strength of 8 and you only do 5 to it? Well, it doesn't get through. And so that means the people that are underneath are safe. There could be some actual pretty interesting concepts that go on strategic-wise from this concept. Heroes and superheroes are nowhere near as powerful as they are in the original game. I mean, if their stack gets eliminated, they can roll to escape, but it's only a 50% chance for a hero and maybe a little bit more for a superhero, like 66. But if they fail that roll, they're gone. That's all there is to it. And if a hero is with one of their best friends, the most they get is they get a joint leadership factor of 3. That's it. They don't double their CF or anything like that. There is still a scapegoat option if the best friend dies, but it's actually more than just a superhero going after him. It's whoever was attacking them. Or whoever was with the best friend at the time goes after them. So that's interesting. But yeah, definitely they nerfed heroes a lot. So I know at the beginning of the video, I said I will give you reasons why you shouldn't necessarily play Dragon Pass. The truth is, after looking at it a little bit, I'm thinking it's probably a better game. So there are reasons you should. But at the same time, I would rather you play, if you can get your hands on it, this original second edition version, especially, not necessarily the first edition, the second edition, especially because the artwork may draw you in, get you into RuneQuest like it has me. I'm going to be getting a RuneQuest source book and putting it on my OSR shelf, so right next to the Thieves Guild stuff, so it's something a little bit more than just a fantasy trip basics. I could say if I want to travel out to other worlds, those are the 2 worlds that we might go. And the Bronze Age of Gerlantha is definitely looking to be one of them. But I would say that, why you wouldn't want to play that is just because it's just not as pretty as the second edition. So it can draw you into something deeper. Anyway, guys, that's my opinion of it. Leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next video.